All right. Hey guys, let's do AP Macro 2024 free response set 1. This is number 3. Assume Malaysia's economy is in a recession and its government currently has a balanced budget. Identify a specific fiscal policy action the government of Malaysia would implement to address that recession. Let's draw a recession real quick. We should just be able to do it off the top of our head. Long run aggregate supply, vertical. Short run aggregate supply, upward sloping. Aggregate demand showing that current equilibrium to the left of your long run aggregate supply. That right there is full output. This is real GDP and output here. We'll use real GDP always, not output, but you can use either one. But the College Board uses real GDP. We should use it. This is price level, PL1, at that lower price level from full employment, and this lower output, we know we are in a recession. Anytime aggregate demand slides to the left of that spot right there, that is us being in a recession. The government can fix that by spending more or taxing less. Those are the only two things the government's pass for fiscal policy, really, is government spending or taxes. Some people also talk about transfer payments, but for our understanding, transfer payments really affects government spending. It is just more government spending or less government spending. Let's stick with these two. If government spending goes up or taxes go down, this is going to increase consumption. More consumption means more aggregate demand, and that's the government's whole goal, is to get us back to full employment. They want to push aggregate demand back to full employment, and they can do that with more government spending or by cutting taxes. So aggregate demand will go back up. We can see that the price level will go back up. We know that real GDP is going to go back up. Real GDP and output are the same thing. And therefore, unemployment will go down. This is our expansionary fiscal policy right there. Easy enough. This is our causal chain of thinking. You should have that tight in your head. Anytime government spending or government spending goes up or taxes go down, consumption goes up, aggregate demand goes up, driving up the price level, real GDP and output goes up, driving down unemployment. It's important that we have that in our head and tight and be able to draw it on a graph. All right, how will the fiscal policy action identified in Part A affect the real interest rate in Malaysia? And explain. Don't forget the explanation. So my explanation this is sort of what we call a crowding out scenario. Anytime we're talking real interest rates, we should be thinking about the loanable funds. The loanable funds market is real interest rates. That's what's on our vertical axes, is real interest rate. This is quantity of loanable funds. We're going to draw two of these because you could draw either one of these graphs showing what happens, and both of them would be absolutely correct. So we have an upward sloping supply of loanable funds. We have a downward sloping demand for loanable funds. We have real interest rate on the vertical. We have quantity of loanable funds on the horizontal. Our understanding of this is anytime the government is spending, we should just know our short answer here is real interest rates are going to go up. Anytime real interest rates go up, we know investment goes down. In essence, these private investors are crowded out of the loanable funds market. Let's talk about this a little bit because it's not always intuitive. But if the government is spending, it has to get that money from someplace. And you would say to me, well, Charles, they're taxing. But is our government, especially in the U.S., ever taxed enough to cover their government spending? I would say not for 100 years. We have had deficits on deficits on deficits, or at least government debt, stacking up year after year, probably for the last 100 years. We know when the government spends, they don't have enough in taxes to spend. So we could simply say that anytime the government is spending, they have to borrow. When they borrow, technically they're going to sell government bonds. But you and I don't want to talk about fiscal policy and them selling government bonds. This is just for our understanding, because that's confusing. When we get to monetary policy, that's where we're going to talk about government bonds. So let's just say that the government, when they spend more, they have to borrow, and they're going to borrow from the banks. This is our easiest understanding. Again, technically, they have to sell bonds, but that money comes out of the banks. So when that money comes out of the banks, the supply of loanable funds decreases. So we could say when the government is spending, the government is going to borrow from the banks. When they borrow from the banks, they're taking money out, and they're reducing the supply of loanable funds, driving up the real interest rate. This is our crowding out scenario. I've never seen an FRQ where they actually ask about crowding out and by using the word crowding out. But this is our understanding here, that anytime the government is spending, they're driving up the real interest rate. When they drive up that real interest rate, it crowds out investment. These investors cannot get cheap loans anymore because the government came in and sucked all that loanable funds out of the banks, driving up the real interest rate and making it too costly to borrow. They were crowded out of the loanable funds market. So this would be my explanation. I would say due to crowding out, when the government borrows, it drives up the real interest rate. I think technically you could probably get away with that. Again, they haven't released these 2024 FRQ responses, so if I'm wrong, I'll come back and make another video. But right now, this is fairly tight for this understanding is not wrong, but they could say it in a worded way that might be different. I don't think so, but I think we're golden here. We could have also shown demand for loanable funds increasing anytime the government is borrowing or spending. Anytime they're spending, we know they're borrowing. Anytime they're borrowing, that's them walking into the banks and saying, give me $1 billion. The demand for loanable funds goes up, and that would also drive up the real interest rate. Now, don't worry so much about the quantity of loanable funds. We see they're doing one way one direction and the other way the other. Don't worry so much about that at this stage of the game. Recognize that what they're asking you about is interest rates, and we're dead right on what's going on with interest rates here. They have to go up anytime there's government spending. Think about it like this. If interest rates go up, if we had to talk about quantity, I hate to run away from you and you think I didn't answer this, but they've never asked about quantity of loanable funds on any of these kind of real interest rate questions. So it's a little more than we need to know. If you don't want to know it, skip ahead, but let's just talk about it for a second. If interest rates are going up, people are going to want to put more money in the banks as they go up, right? As the government is borrowing and taking money, or people are borrowing, taking money out of the banks to buy these government bonds. That means both of these are happening at the same time. That's all we're saying, is that when people are coming in, they want to take money out of the bank. The demand for loanable funds is going up. And remember, the loanable funds graph just shows, that's what this graph is all about. All it shows is money in the banks. That's all it's really showing. And that's the way we should think about it. More demand means less money in the banks. People come in and want to take money out. That's more demand. And when they take it out, supply of loanable funds decreases. I'm a supply of loanable funds thing. Now, you got to decide. You don't need both of these on an AP exam. You just need one. If you wanted to use this one for government spending, that's cool. They're going to give you all the points. I'm always a supply of loanable funds decreasing kind of guy, and that's the one I'm going to use to show. I would say use one, get close to it, and then just use it every time again and again and again. And know that sometimes they might have given you an FRQ, and they might be specific. Usually they'll let you draw, even though they're not asking us for loanable funds. I don't know why I'm talking about it, other than it makes me happy, right? Every so often, they're going to ask you to draw loanable funds, and then they're going to be specific. They're going to say, what happened to the demand for loanable funds? Again, if the government is spending, they're borrowing. If they're borrowing, demand for loanable funds goes up. Or they might every so often say, what's happening to supply of loanable funds? 9 times out of 10, they're going to let you decide which one you want to draw. You draw it, and you're golden. All right. God, that was a lot of words, wasn't it? All right. Let's look at C. We're going to need a little bit more space for C, I think. And this is foreign exchange. So this is a FOREX question from Unit 6 of the curriculum. Malaysia and Japan are trading partners with flexible exchange rates. Malaysia's currency is the ringgit, I guess. Japan's currency is the yen. Draw a correctly labeled graph of the foreign exchange market for the ringgit relative to the yen. Show the effect of a change in real interest rates from Part B. Now, we know real interest rates are going up. Again, domestically, and I can't say this enough, and it's confusing to everybody, up until Unit 6, anytime we talk about interest rates, we're going to talk about investment, because that's domestic investment. That's people taking out loans to build things. So when interest rates go up, people borrow less money. Investment goes down. This is domestic. But as soon as we said foreign exchange, Well, real interest rates attract capital inflows from other countries. So let's use these two countries. Let's say this is Malaysia and this is Japan. Malaysia has a higher real interest rate. Japan has a lower real interest rate, relatively. Well, if Malay has a higher real interest rate, the people, and this is our foreign exchange, I call it the big FOREX in the sky. Whoever has the higher real interest rate will attract capital or currency from other countries. So Japanese want this high, let's call it a 20% real interest rate, whereas they have a 2% real interest rate. So their citizens are going to want to take their yen and dump them into the FOREX, and they want to buy Malay's ringgit, which is the currency for the Malay. They want to put their money in Malay banks so they can get this high 20% real interest rate. So if we're drawing a foreign exchange graph here, what we recognize, and it's just supply and demand here, and then it would be, if you're drawing these, and we're talking about the ringgit or the Malay currency, it is Malay on the vertical and quantity of Malay currency or ringgit on the bottom. And then it would be Japan to Malay. If we would have been drawing the foreign exchange graph and we were talking about the yen, it would have still been just supply and demand, and it would have been yen on the vertical, quantity of yen on the horizontal, and then it would have been Malay to yen. I hope that makes sense, because we don't want to lose points on drawing the graphs because we flip something around here, right? So we just need, anytime you're talking about a certain currency, it will be that currency on the vertical and the horizontal, and then you just do the other one left to right here for Japan to Malay. Cool. Easy enough to draw those. So what we recognize is that the currency from Japan is going to flow into the Malay. They want to, let's walk our way through it because it is confusing and I'm jumping. I haven't done foreign exchange since 3 or 4 months ago. So I'm thinking through it the same rate you are here. I haven't, and again, after, you get old enough, you just start forgetting stuff. So I have to think back and go back and get it in my head. The Japanese want to put their money in Malay banks. To do that, they have to buy Malay dollars. Malay banks do not accept yen into their banks. Go with me on this, right? These foreign investors have to buy Malay ringgit. To do that, that's going to show that demand for ringgit in the foreign exchange market. In the foreign exchange market, do I want to go? I don't think I want to go into that any deeper right yet. I could have. I can always make it more complicated than we need to. Let's make sure we recognize what's going on here, though. This is exchange rate 1, exchange rate 2. What we recognize that as the demand for the ringgit goes up, it's going to cause the ringgit to appreciate in value. So the ringgit is going to appreciate in value. As the ringgit gets stronger, this implies not only that the ringgit is appreciating, but that it's going to take more Japanese yen to buy 1 ringgit or 1 Malay currency, which means that the Malay appreciated. It takes more Japanese dollars to buy 1 ringgit, therefore the Malay currency has appreciated. Cool. There you go. I think that's exactly what they're looking for right there. And that was a lot of words to explain it. As a result of the change in the value of the ringgit showed in Part C, will the Malaysian imports increase, decrease, or remain the same? Let's understand that these are a lot of multiple choice, a lot of FRQs. Anytime a currency appreciates, we should know that their exports are going to go down and therefore their imports are going to go up. This should be tight in your head at this point in the game. Malay currency appreciates. Well, think about that for a second. If their currency is more expensive, then that also means their goods and services are more expensive to foreigners. So foreigners are going to buy less of their stuff. Their exports are going to go down. I'll say that again. If a currency appreciates, not only does the currency appreciate, but that implies that to buy those currency, that means all the goods and services that the Malaysian countries sell are now more expensive because their currency is more expensive. Foreigners are going to buy less of their goods and services, therefore exports go down. But as this Malay currency is stronger, they're going to buy more foreign goods because now those foreign goods are relatively cheaper, is the way we would explain that. So we would say imports are going to increase because as the Malay currency appreciates, foreign goods are relatively less expensive. I hope that makes sense. And we showed the graph up here. We just had to explain it. All right, guys, that's number 3. A little wordy there, but I had a good time doing it for you. Keep working hard and, be safe. Take care.